Alright, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. So today we will start a new first topic lah, basically first chapter, Introduction to Statistics. Right. So we start with the definition, right? So since this is a first chapter, we start with the definition of statistics. So statistic is a method or procedure, right? For collecting data, organizing data, summarizing data, presenting and analyzing data. So it start with the collecting the information. Information is commonly known as data lah, right? So basically, statistic is dealing with the data. We deal with all the information we call as data lah. Later on, I will define what is data. So once we have a data, we collect the data. So the process of collecting the data is also part of statistics. So whether we want to design a questionnaire or we want to take from a secondary data, right? This is called a part of statistics juga lah. So in collecting data, we have sampling techniques, right? So if we have a very large population, we cannot take all the population. We take some portion of the population. That one we call as sampling lah. So sampling is part of data collection. So statistic is how information is being collected, right? Is being collected, and then once we already have the data, when we have information, then how we going to organize the data? So that is the definition of statistics. We collect the data, how we collect the data, organize the data, and then after we organize the data, we analyze the data. We analyze the data in a proper manner so all the people in layman people will understand what is the data is telling us, right? So that is a job of a statistic job. Then once you already have the result, we're going to present the result, right? Present the result in a proper manner, in a bar chart ke, in data visualization ke, dalam table ke. That is part of statistics. So we can summarize that statistic is how information is being collected, organized, and analyzed, interpret and presented. So interpret tadi I tak masuk kan. So once we already analyze the data, then we need to interpret the data so people can understand, right? And then present the data, right? So there are 5 elements in statistics. First is how information is being collected, organize, analyze, interpret, and present. So there are 5 elements in a definition of statistics, right? So if you can see from the slide here, so how information is being collected, either primary or secondary, organized in readable and understandable form, and then we present. It's supposed to be analyzed first lah. We analyze the data in a correct, appropriate method, such as a linear regression, t-test, one-way ANOVA. Interpret the result, that giving the most meaningful information from the data gathered, and then we present the data in useful and meaningful way, right? So this one is supposed to be um, number 1, number 2, number 3, 4, and the last part is present, right? So this is a definition of statistics. Statistics also refers to numerical information, right, such as the average starting salary of the university graduates, the average number of proton watches sold, the percentage of unmarried women in Klang Valley. So the statistics is numerical information as well. But this one, what we don't call this average as a statistics with S. This one should be statistic without S. Means that the numerical value, numerical measure taken from a sample This is what we call as statistic. Nanti I akan introduce properly lah. Right. Now let's look at a basic terminologies. Before we go in further to this subject, we look into the basic terminology. So then you can understand the term that we're going to use throughout this subject. Right. So the first term that we're going to use is variable. So what does it mean? Variable is a characteristic or attribute of interest in the population of or sample. So means in a simple way to put is variable is something that you want to study, right? Something that you want to study or interested to measure. Let's say for example, you want to know what is the average height of a student student in class, right? So average is the statistic, is a numerical value. Height is our variable, is something that we want to measure, right? Variable is something that we want to measure. So in this case, height is our variable. So we know that we want to measure height of a student in a class. Maybe 30 student or 40 student in a class, right? So this is what we call as variable, something that we want to measure. So data, in other hand, data, the value that can be obtained from measurement or observation. And then let's say you take a measure of a student height. So the first student is 162 centimeter, 172 centimeter, 180 centimeter, and then 179 centimeter, 159 centimeter. So this is what we call as data, the value inside the variable. This is what we call as data. And the variable is something that we interested to measure. Right? You can understand differentiate between variable and data. Very clear, right? So now, let's move to the population, the definition of population. So population consists of all subject or object that being studied. Right? Subject means something human. Object means how many marbles in the experiment, right? So let's say for example, let's say you want to study knowledge, attitude, and practice on dengue fever prevention in Perak Tengah district. So you know, as a district in Perak, there are many district in Perak. So let's say you focus on Perak Tengah district, right? So you want to know the knowledge of people in Perak Tengah district about dengue fever prevention. So the population is all residents, stay in Perak Tengah district. Means all members in Perak Tengah. So let's say for a simple example, let's say you want to know the satisfaction of student on the classroom environment, right? Yeah, say UiTM Tapah, right? So all student in UiTM Tapah is the population of the study. Means the keyword is all member, all. There must be the magic word all subject, right? So sample is a portion of the population. It's a portion of the population. So for example, let's say this is all member, all student in UiTM Tapah. So kita ambil yang paling simple lah, simple example, so you can understand and how to differentiate between population and sample. So let's say capital N is 5,000. So we have total student in UiTM Tapah is 5,000. Let's say you want to take one sample, right? This is sample 1. Sample 1. So number of sample a number of sampling unit. So this one we call as sample 1, right? N equal to 4. Can you notice the symbol that I use, right? So capital N is representing number of students in UiTM Tapa. Right, this is what we call as a population, right? All students in UiTM Tapa. Let's say you take one sample. One sample is a portion of from a population. So dalam satu sampel satu tu you ada 4 orang. So small letter n is equal to 4. Means you in one sample 1 you have 4 sampling unit. You take a portion from a population. It can be many sample. It can be, let's say you take this one as a sample number 1. Let's say you take this fellas as sample number 2. I take this one as sample number 3 and so on lah. For example, until 5,000. Let's say you nak ambil sikit lah, 5 sample. Right, so you can take randomly 5 sample, but in single sample you have many sampling units. Right? Boleh faham? Between population and sample. Sample can be many sample, and number of people in a sample we call as a sampling unit. Remember again, number of people or number of object in a sample we call as a sampling unit. Alright. So now let's look at another term, which is statistic and parameter. Statistic and parameter. Let me use to take. Let's say. Oh, nice. Let's say kita tengok dua ni, right? Statistic and parameter. So both are summary numerical value. Summary numerical value. The difference between statistic and parameter. You remember, you notice this one, statistic without S. Just now we already know the definition of statistics with S. Statistics is how information is being collected, organized, analyzed, interpreted, and presented. Right? But statistic is a summary numerical measure. Summary numerical measure compute from sample. Parameter means a summary numerical measure compute from the entire population. Boleh? This is very simple definition term. So make sure you focus and pay attention. Make sure you understand the term that I give to you, because we're going to use this term throughout the subject, right? So statistic is a summary numerical measure compute from a sample. So for example, let's say we want to find the average ataupun mean. So for statistic, right, the symbol is going to be X bar. For parameter, the symbol going to be mu, because it's computed for the whole population. For statistic, it's computed for sample. So the symbol are different. We are using different symbol to differentiate between statistic and parameter. Right. So another example, let's say standard deviation. Standard deviation, the statistic is S. For parameter is sigma. For variance, statistic is S square. Parameter is sigma square. So this is a symbol. Bila kita tengok the next chapter on descriptive statistics, we compute a measure of central tendency. Right? When I ask you to compute from the mean, from the sample, so you are going to use this symbol. If you want to compute from total population, you're going to use this symbol. Right? So that is a difference between statistic and parameter. Right. So now let's look at census. Census is a study that being carried out using the whole population. Right. It's the same as banci lah, banci penduduk. Right. We are focusing on whole population. Right. So it's a study taking all all member in the population into consideration. Right. So for example, banci lah. Usually, census is done for very small population number lah. For example, let's say we have not total number of students UiTM dapat is 5,000, right? It's quite small, kan? So we can do census to consider all member or all student in UiTM Tapa as part of the study, right? So sample survey, since dia menggunakan the word sample means that we take a portion from the population, right? So sample survey is we take a portion from a population and we do a survey. We give a questionnaire, or we take observation on a portion of the population. So involve a subgroup or sample of a population being chosen. So survey means that we do a primary observation lah. Primary observation either using a questionnaire, observation, survey and so on lah. Pilot study, in other hand, is not a study about aircraft. Right? Pilot study is not a study about aircraft. It's a study done before the actual study. Boleh faham, So it's a study done before the actual study being carried out lah. For example, let's say you are developing a questionnaire, right? You are developing a questionnaire to test about knowledge on dengue fever prevention, and then you are planning to distribute to all member in the Perak Tengah district, all resident in Perak Tengah district. Let's say you want to take a sample lah. So once you already finish developing or constructing a questionnaire, right? So you cannot simply go and distribute to all member in the population. You need to test whether your questionnaire is reliable or valid before you distribute, right? Sama juga dengan production lah. When you design a new product, you need to test whether your product is reliable, means boleh percaya, boleh pakai, and durable, ataupun boleh tahan berapa lama you nak bagi warranty, right? And then is it practical and work ataupun tak work, right? So you need to test dulu before you sell the product, before you give to the customer. So same concept, right? Same concept, but a different area. Pilot study means we need to test our questionnaire, whether the questionnaire is reliable, boleh percaya, and valid, valid for answering our objective, and before we distribute to the our study interest area. Right, sampling frame. Sampling frame is a list of member in the population, right? So sampling frame, in another term, is a list of all member in the population. It consists of their information. Tambah sikit, consists of their information. So why we need sampling frame? So there, in sampling method, we have two types of sampling. First is a non-randomized sampling method. Another one is randomized sampling method. Hey, do you understand? Boleh faham? Are you following me? Right?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Right, good. So this is a bit confusing because kita tak masuk lagi the real topic, but I am explaining the surface concept. Right. This is sampling frame. Is a list of all member in the population consists of their information. Why we need sampling frame? So in sampling method, right? We are talking about sampling method. There are two type of method. So first, a random method. Another one is non-random method. Non-random method does not require sampling frame. Non-random method is not require sampling frame. But in randomized sampling method, most of the method require sampling frame because we want to design the sampling or data collection random as possible, right? So we need to get all member in the population. Kita nak dapatkan list member on the population, and then we're going to pick one or some sampling units from the sampling frame, right? So kita nak senang ambil nama, nak pilih. Right? So example, list of companies registered in Busra, Malaysia. Another one is, let's say, a list of student names in class. Let's say kita tadi, I bagi example kan. Let's say you want to know the satisfaction on classroom among student in UiTM Tapah. So we have student in UiTM Tapah. So we have capital N is equal to 5,000, right? So to select a sample, right? To select a sample, right? So how to select a sample? We need to have a list of all member, starting from number 1, number 2, number 3. Let's say Ahmad. What is the student ID? 201. And then phone number, right? So, and then sampai 5,000 lah, sampai 5,000. Let's say kita nak select the first sample to be tested, right? So we assign a random number. Let's say first random number lies on number 21. So we're going to pick number 21. So how to pick number 21? Kalau kita dah ambil number 21, let's say kita ada nama Abu saja, right? Without their information, so how we going to contact them, right? So that's why in a sampling frame, it must be a list of all member in the population consists of their information, so we can contact the subject lah ataupun sampling unit, right? Are you okay? Kalau you rasa mengantuk or you want me to stop for a while, just tell me, okay? Right?
Okay, sir.
Alright. So kita rehat lagi 8 minit, kita rehat, okay? Kita baru 22 minit. So now we're going to a descriptive type of statistics. Right? Type of statistics, we have a descriptive statistics and inferential statistics. There are two types of statistics. Right? This is type number 1 and this is type number 2. Right? For descriptive statistics, data are compiled, organized, and summarized and present in a suitable visual form, which is easy to understand. Right? Various table, graph, and chart are used to present the information obtained from the data. This is the descriptive statistic. Basically, descriptive statistic, we just want to describe the nature of the data. We want to know what is the mean of the age, mean of numerical value, what is the frequency, mode of the categorical value. We want to know what is a number is high, what number is low, what is the pattern of the data, either is skewed to the right or skewed to the left or normally distributed, right? So we just want to know the description of the data. That is a descriptive statistics. Right? So descriptive statistics are very important because we simply present our raw data, and it will be hard to visualize what the data was showing, especially there was a lot of it. Right? So nowadays we are dealing with the very high data, very a number of data is very large. This is the area of big data, and big data is big data means we have a lot of observation, right? A lot of sample. And the problem now is, instead of having a lot of observation, you also have a lot of dimension, right? For example, uh, let's say if I want to relate with your course, let's say we want to know the pattern recognition using a picture. So we have many pixel, so many high dimensional. Let's say in consumer part, we have customer record. Let's say in Tesco ke dalam supermarket, every day there are a lot of customer coming in buying something, right? So we want to know the pattern or buying pattern, buying powers, right? So there are a lot of data out there, right? So the descriptive statistics is very important to visualize and to know the early sign of the data, right? That's all. So the raw data are transformed into meaningful form so that the user and manager can make a generalization or conclusion just by taking quick look of presentation lah, right? So now let's look at as inferential statistics. So inferential statistics is another type of statistics, right? So remember, descriptive statistics, we just want to describe the data in terms of their pattern, central tendency, value, and dispersion, and so on. So in inferential statistics, we make generalization about population by analyzing the sample. We let's say we take a sample, we analyze the sample, we make a generalized or conclusion or inference back to the population, right? We conclude to the whole population based on the sample taken. Of course, a single sample will not enough. Let's say you take a several sample and you analyze the several sample and infer back to the population. For example, if a sample is good presentation of the population, accurate conclusion about the population can be inferred back to the inferred from the analysis. Let's say kita ada one example. Let's say you are the population UiTM student, right? So let's say capital N equal to 5,000, right? So you want to know the satisfaction about a classroom environment, right? Among UiTM students. So let's say you take uh, 3 sample. This is a sample number 1, this is sample number 2, this is sample number 3. So you ambil 3 sample, right? Sample number 1, N1 equal to, let's say 300. Sample number 2, N2, let's say also 300. S3 and 3 also 300. So you analyze the data. Let's say we are using a significant test or hypothesis testing. Either you are using a linear regression or any classifier, and then you got the answer. Either they're satisfied or not satisfied, right? So this value or this result is inferred back to the population, right? We are concluding this result to the whole population. But you notice that we are taking only 3 sample, 3 representative. But from these 3 representative, we are concluding the whole population. Right? This is what we call inferential statistics. So the process is not that simple lah. Right? We need to start with the planning of sampling, design, data collection method. So we want to select the true representative of the population, right? So then we can make a accurate conclusion lah. So this is what inferential statistics did lah. So now let's look at the the next sentence, dia kata, the procedure is to select a sample from a population, measure the variable of interest, analyze the data, interpret the output, and draw conclusion based on the analysis. So this is the process of inferential statistics. We might interest in the mathematics mark of all students in college. It is not practical to measure all mathematics mark of the student, all student in the college. It's actually in to measure all mathematics mark in student in college is very simple, but I just make it difficult lah. And I say it's susah nak measure, right? So, thus we have to measure a smaller sample of group students, let's say 100 students, which are used to represent a larger population of all students in the college. So, to select 100 students, we need to use a proper sampling techniques lah. The properties of samples such as mean or standard deviation are not called parameter but statistics. So kita akan discuss more detail the method of inferential statistics later on lah in next chapter, right? So this is very large topic. For the next topic, chapter number 2, we are discussing on descriptive statistics, right? So this is type of statistics that we're going to understand and study, right? Any questions before we take a very small rest, 5-minute rest? Ada soalan tak? Right. I don't think we can finish all by today, but I tried my best to make sure you understand some part of the important term dalam statistics ni. At least we finish until muka surat 8 ni lah. Okay, we take a very small rest, 5 minutes. Now is 9:21, 9:29. So kita datang balik 9:35, right? So now we are looking into a type of data, right? There are two types of data, right? Same as type of statistics, we have two types of statistics, which is descriptive statistics and inferential statistics. For type of data, we already know the term variable and data, right? What is the difference between the variable and data? Variable means that the something that we are interested to study, but data is a value inside that variable. So the value inside that variable we call as data. So there are two types of data, right? So first is a primary data, right? So let me use another color, blue color. This is a primary data, number one. Number two is secondary data. So primary data are the data collected at first hand. Means that you are the first person to get the data, right? You are the only person or the first person in the world get that data. Means whether you are using a questionnaire, you are distributing the questionnaire, for example, very simple example, distributing a questionnaire, then you get the feedback. So you are the first person to get the data, get the information. Or you are design a experiment. Let's say a very simple experiment. Let's say macam semalam punya contoh, you ambil cerek, small size, middle size and large size. You letak air 500 ml and you boil. So you want to know how what is the time taken to for that water to boil, right? So you are the first person who get the data, right? So that is one example dalam experiment punya ni lah. Let's say you do a observation, right? Observation means that you are measuring knowledge, attitude and practice on dengue fever prevention, right? Then you did a observation on house to house, right? Tengok dia punya practicability of the residents, either longkang tu tutup ke, tangki air tutup ke, ada air bertakung ke, sampah terbiar ke. So you are making your first observation. So that is your data lah. You are the first person. But for secondary data, the data is already collected and stored at some place. For example, data is already published by a newspaper or journal or website, right? Dia dah publish kat mana-mana, right? So it means that you are not the first person to get the data, to know the data. And the data that is stored in a database, right? So such as student information, student ID, phone number, even though you are the person is the first person, but the collection of the data, right, is not, you are not the first person to know, right? Means that the data is stored in a database or the warehouse lah. So that is also a secondary data, right? So secondary data, basically, you know, you are not the first person, you get the data from others, right? So what is the advantage and disadvantage of secondary data and primary data? So primary data is more accurate and consistent with the objective of the research. Let's say you are doing the research, you want to know the knowledge, attitude and practice on dengue fever prevention in Perak Tengah district. So none of people have done it before, right? So you are the first person. So in designing the questionnaire, you the only one to know that whether your questionnaire is correct, measurable, uh, to the objective that you want to study, right? And how the data is being collected, you are the only one know whether the data is correctly collected or not correctly collected, right? So that is a advantage lah. Disadvantage is you need more time to design a questionnaire, you need manpower, maybe paying some labor, incur a labor cost, you need to hire somebody to collect the data, right? That is a disadvantage lah. For secondary data, the advantage is easy accessible. It means easy to get the data, right? But disadvantage is we don't know the reliability of the data, whether the data is correctly collected or the data is falsely input in the computer. Maksudnya dia duduk depan komputer, dia key in the data, false data, right? We don't know, right? So we need to make sure the source of data is correct lah, right? So other than that, you can read by yourself lah. I don't want to interpret. Nanti buku you dah dapat, you akan dapat semua lah. So now let's look at the type of variable. Tadi kita tengok type of data very simple. We have primary data and secondary data. Right? Primary data means that you are the first person who get the data. Secondary data is you take the data from other source. Right? So now, type of variable. Let's look at this one. So variable, this is very important, right? So because when you want to do a bar plot, you want to do a next analysis, you need to know the type of variable and type of data, right? So let's look at variable. So we have two type of variable, which is qualitative and quantitative, right? Qualitative and quantitative. Qualitative variable is a variable that cannot be measured. It's a categorical variable. Categorical variable, for example, let's say gender, male or female. Colors in traffic light, red, yellow, green. So something that you cannot measure, but you know that that is red, that is yellow. It's been classified earlier. And in medical term, let's say you group a people into two group. For example, the first group going to be a case group, the second group is going to be a control group. So you're going to give a placebo for a control group, you're going to give a drug with some amount of quantity untuk case group, right? So you just classify into two group, right? So if you are classifying the object or human subject into a group, so that is a qualitative data, something that you cannot measure. Another example lagi apa? Something you cannot measure. Ethnicity, Malay, Chinese, Indian, Siamese. right? So something you cannot measure is like in a categorical variable. Categorical variable. So whenever it is a categorical variable, so it is a qualitative variable. It's a non-numerical scale, right? Non-numeric scale, right? So for quantitative variable, it's a numerical scale, something that you can measure or count. For example, dalam quantitative data ni, quantitative variable, there are two sub category. The first one is a discrete quantitative variable. Another one is continuous quantitative variable. Right? Write down. So discrete involve the process of counting. Right? Arise from a counting process. For example, number of children 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 or 0. Number of accident in a month at Kuala Kangsar 100, 200, 300, right? So it being counted, right? Number of student in the class, right? So that one is based on counting process. For continuous, so for if they are involved a counting process, there are no decimal point, right? For example, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we get this data based on counting process. So in mathematics, discrete means the whole involved with the whole number lah. Continuous means that any number within that range are possible. Boleh faham I cakap apa? So I try to explain more linear so you can understand. So continuous discrete quantitative variable involve with measuring process. Measuring process. Ayo. Need to pause for a while. Okay. So continuous is arise from measuring process. Means that we are measured based on some scale lah. Include fraction and decimal. So means that let's say you are measuring height of a student. Height of a student starting from 0 until let's say normal height of the student in Malaysia is maximum going to be 190 lah centimeter. Maximum. This is too high lah, too high. So any number between 0 to 190 are possible. Means that it can be under 162.5 centimeter, 175.3 centimeter. So any number within this interval are possible. So we are measuring based on some scale. Let's say you are measuring time in minutes or hours, days, distance, meter, kilometer. So we are using some metrics punya measurement kan. So anything are measured using some metrics measurement. So it lies under continuous quantitative variable. Means that it can take a fraction, it can take a decimal point. Right? Boleh faham? Boleh? Right? Very simple. But it takes time to understand lah. You need to carefully understand what is the difference between qualitative and quantitative. And under quantitative, we have a discrete and continuous. Right? So, now let's move on to the next part. Okay. Now, let me put here. Okay. So, I just repeat again. So, we have variable. Right? Under variable, we have two part is qualitative variable and then we have quantitative quantitative variable. Under quantitative variable, we have two parts, which is a discrete variable. Another one is continuous variable. So please take note on this one. So there are two sections here. We understand there are two sections here, right? The first section is qualitative. Qualitative involve non-numeric variable. It based on categorical variable, right? For quantitative is a numeric variable is taken from counting process or measurement measurement process, right? So we understand this initially, right? So now there are level of measurement under qualitative and quantitative. We want to know what is the level of measurement. Let's say I pick another color. So dekat sini I letak. So we have nominal scale and ordinal scale. We have interval scale and ratio scale. So there are four level of measurement under qualitative and quantitative, under type of variable lah. So the least power, the least information, so this one I select ke sini. This is less informative. This is high informative. So when you have a nominal scale, it's a less informative. Ordinal scale is upgrade. Interval scale is informative. Or ratio, we have a high informative. So apa benda ni semua? So we need to remember here, I dah segregate kepada two part here. Nominal and ordinal, it lies under qualitative variable. Qualitative variable is non-numeric, is a categorical variable. Right? So nominal scale is a categorical variable. Is a categorical variable that cannot be ranked. Cannot be ranked, cannot be ordered. Maksudnya, for example, this one cannot rank or order. Cannot be ranked or ordered. Right? Maksudnya, for example, let's say gender. We have male or female. We cannot say male is number 1, female is number 2. Or we cannot say female is number 1, male number 2. It cannot be ranked. It cannot be in order. Another example is, let's say ethnicity. Ethnicity, Malay, Chinese, Indian. So we cannot say Malay is number 1, Chinese number 2, Indian number 3. Or we cannot say Indian number 1, Chinese number 2, Malay number 3. It cannot be in order, it cannot be ranked. So whenever you have a categorical variable that cannot be ranked or cannot be ordered, cannot be in order, so it lies under nominal scale. Boleh faham? So ordinal scale, based on the name, ordinal means that it can be ordered or ranked, right? For example, let's say we have a categorical variable. Let's say committee members. Committee members. So first is we have president, vice president, secretary, and treasurer. So it should be in rank, kan? It should be in order, right? This type of categorical variable should be in order. The first should be president, second is vice president, secretary, and treasurer. It cannot be the first is secretary, second vice president, third president, and last is treasurer. It should be in order. So another example is, let's say, monthly income of let's say a customer, contoh kan. Let's say less than 1,000, 1,000 to 2,000, 2,000 to 3,000, 3,000 to 4,000, and more than 5,000, for example, kan. It should be in order from the smallest to the largest, right? So this type of categorical variable, right, is lies under ordinal scale. Boleh? Boleh faham? So the
Boleh
difference
saya.
between nominal and ordinal. Ordinal is a categorical variable, cannot be in order, right? Cannot be ranked. But for ordinal scale, is a categorical variable, must be in order, right? So let's move to the next part. This is going to be our last part in this session. Uh, we have a quantitative variable. Quantitative variable, we know that quantitative variable is a numerical variable. It based on counting or some measurement lah, right? So since these both are numerical variable, so what differentiate between ordinal and ratio? So interval scale, the zero value is not true zero. What does it mean? It means that the zero value is not a true zero. For example, let's say you measure a temperature in Celsius, right? Zero value is takat beku kan, right? So we cannot say that zero value is no temperature. It doesn't mean like that. It means that it's a very cold situation, right? So it means something else. It's not a true zero, right? What is a true zero? A true zero is if you say that you have no money, means that in your pocket you have no RM zero lah. You have no money. It's a true zero, right? So ratio is true zero value, right? So once you got the book, lecture note, you can read back lah. So dia kata kat sini, difference between measurement, true zero exists. Interval scale, no true zero. Means temperature in Fahrenheit, standardized exam score. Uh, example dekat ratio ni, height, age, weekly food spending and so on lah. Right? So in brief, I explain like that. So you can get this chart lah, copy back this chart, so you can understand the difference between interval, ratio, nominal, and ordinal, right? So I think that's all. Ada soalan tak before we end our session? This one is we already end at the page 8 lah, dekat level of measurement. Next class we're going to look into a data collection method. So please screenshot this one exercise. So since you belum dapat buku lagi kan, screenshot the exercise. Try to do it by yourself, right? Try to practice and try to identify what is the type of variable for each situation and what is the level of measurement for each situation. Okay, have you done? Okay, I think that's all. Thank you.
Dan saya.
I think that's all. Thank you very much. Assalam.